Wel, ni newydd o mas o sesiwn lle mae yna un casgliad o farddoniaeth yn seiliedig ar deithio a'r eidal yn benodol. A mae hwnna'n dod â ni'n hapus iawn gyda Cath a Hammad fan hyn i sôn am ieithoedd. Achos mae lot fawr o ieithoedd wedi bod mewn dros y penwythnos. I just said that we've come from your particular reading, Cath, and Italian plays a prominent part in that.
Yes.
Tell us why.
Well, I was going to Italy a few years ago on a long trip, and I decided I was going to try and learn Italian before going. And so I was having lessons locally while I was living in Aberystwyth, and I was also at the same time learning Welsh while I was there. And the process of learning languages, I'm not a natural linguist, I'm not very able, but I find it very interesting.
I know that feeling.
But I find the process of learning a language and also how languages are taught to us, the experience of being in the classroom, and when you're really in your early stages of learning a language, the kind of things you say in that language often are kind of odd phrases, kind of strange conversations, and they can be very surreal.
Yes.
So I find that really interesting. And Hammad, you speak so many different languages. Do you have you experienced that kind of thing?
Yes, I mean in the beginning especially, because I usually start learning a language in a very traditional, conventional sort of way, with a grammar book, and usually some very old, grammar book I would pick up, and most of the examples for example, a grammatical case or conjugation or declension would be very strange. So my vocabulary, especially at initial stages, is very lopsided and surreal in a lot of ways. So yes, definitely. And how is your Italian journey going at the moment?
Non va bene. Non va bene. No, I think it's what I explore a lot in those poems is that feeling where when you're learning a language and you're not in the place where you're going to use it, it's all hypothetical. You can convince yourself that you're very capable.
You have to go to Italian restaurants.
Yes, exactly. What a terrible bit. And then I got there and my language skills, they kind of dried up. There were minimal stuff, then you realise how much you don't know. And I suppose it's that stage in learning a language where you know enough to realise what you're missing. And you can hear some things, but things are moving past you. And I think that a lot of the poems that I was reading today and that are in my second collection are about that experience of grasping onto language. So a couple of words here. So I have words in Italian and words in Welsh, and words in Cornish as well, as I'm from Cornwall, in that book, and they represent an attempt to get hold of the language, but also my struggle with it, I suppose.
Of all the languages you speak, how many of those languages do you use in what you write?
So in my novel, For Dervish is my first novel, I've used Persian, Urdu, which are the languages that I'm most comfortable with. Also Turkish and Punjabi a little bit, and some Italian as well, actually, Italian and Greek. At the moment I'm working on the Urdu translation of a poetry collection. So yes, I was going to say something about Italian, that a very similar sort of experience I came across. Jhumpa Lahiri,
yes.
the novelist, the American novelist, she embarked on a very similar journey like yourself, and she writes about that in Italian. So she learned Italian, which wasn't her first or second language. The second language was Bengali, actually, and she taught herself that in her 30s, I think, and then she started writing in Italian and immersed herself in only reading Italian. So I really found that inspiring. Her book, which came out a few years ago, In Altre Parole, in other words, which is a bilingual sort of addition, parallel text, which I love. That sort of text I really love, because they're really helpful if you want to learn a language, because you've got that original language, and also so yes, I found that very similar to her experiences as well. Jhumpa Lahiri's work.
Yeah. Is there a word, maybe between the three of us, we choose one each for the three of us, that you like that's not translatable from any of the languages that you use?
I'm trying to think of a word in Cornish, which would be a language that probably fewer people know, but it's very similar in many ways to Welsh. There's lots of kind of shared roots. And I suppose a word that I grew up with but didn't realise, was a kind of, I don't know if it's actually Cornish or it's kind of Cornu English, if it's a dialect word, but that would be scritching. So I thought everybody would know scritching, and scritching is a certain kind of crying. Okay, so it's I guess it's almost like close to scratching. Like, so you're crying so much you're scratching at your eyes. Yeah, so scritching.
That's new one for me.
Yeah. And very evocative as well in the way it sounds. You know.
Yeah.
The word I'm thinking of is moonj, which is a word in Saraiki, and it's very similar to hiraeth, the Welsh word, which is often, said.
So I won't choose that one now. I won't choose.
And it's very similar. That it's about the longing of something that you may never have had. If that makes sense. Longing, nostalgia as well, and wishing for something. All those things. But I've heard similar sort of concepts in other languages as well, including Portuguese. There's a saudade.
Saudade.
Yeah, that's also very similar.
Well, no, as I said, I won't use hiraeth.
Yeah,
because that's usually the untranslatable Welsh word that's given as an example. But I mean, Cynefin, I think, is one that is close to my heart, and especially when you think of where it comes from. Again, like so many of the older Welsh words, they come from a more kind of agricultural background, or from the countryside. And Cynefin is really that innate ability that a newborn lamb has, or a young sheep has, to know how far to go before they're on somebody else's land.
Wow, what a word!
Very specific.
So it's your square mile. It's how you know where you belong.
Wow, amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's fab.
Thank you.